Wishing you all a super warm welcome to Connecting with Purpose, where we connect with winners and thought leaders from multiple sectors to provide you with a 360-degree view on purpose. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Our purpose, to inspire you to unlock your potential and optimise your performance and impact.
So, welcome to Connecting with Purpose. So today I'm joined by Joe Oliver, who is the owner and proprietor of Joe Oliver Golf Academy and also the lead coach for Hertfordshire County Golf. Joe's been a golf professional for 25 years, and that was a former England international, 16 years on the Ladies European Tour, and winner of the WPGA Order of Merit in 2013. Have I got all that right, Joe?
You have indeed, Neil. Thank you.
Great. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. So we're excited. We obviously had a preliminary conversation around how purpose shows up and has shown up in your career and driven what you've done over the years. And I think everyone's going to be really interested and excited to hear your story as we sort of go through. But rather than do it chronologically in any prescribed format, we've got a couple of kind of key questions at the start and the end of the podcast, which we'll ask you, and it'd be great to get your answers on those, and then perhaps we can talk about some sort of salient points throughout those throughout the session between those two questions.
Sure.
So what I'd like to start with, all right, if it's all right with you, is our magic moments, or 3 magic moments that we'd like from you. I guess it's more kind of defining moment for you. So what's been a defining moment for you in your career, in your life? What really sticks out? What was a kind of 10 out of 10 moment for you that you think has really kind of driven what you've done? So what were they? 3 of them would be great.
Okay.
And how do you describe them? And then lastly, what would you call them? Nice little pithy one, one word, something like that.
Yeah, that's tough. I've been thinking about that, and it is quite tough because looking at defining moments, it's obviously I guess they categorize themselves a little bit sometimes, whether if it's career defined or just personally defined. I when I was thinking about this, I kind of realized how little I remember about certain things, and maybe beyond the age of 14 for some strange reason, which is strange. However, I think if I look at it in terms of I suppose my foundation of my career, of kind of what pushed me in certain directions, defining moments were probably the first one that comes to mind where golf was concerned was being selected to play for England. I think that was a defining moment because it took me quite a few years to get my full cap to represent England at home internationals. And I guess I was probably one of those players which I had to really put the selectors in a position where they had no choice to leave me out. I had to really earn my place. I wasn't back then. The how they selected was slightly different to now, and it was based, yes, on performance, obviously, and where you fitted in with that, but it was also based a little bit on the selectors' decision making at the time. And say if you didn't quite fit the mold, maybe you wouldn't be at the top of the list, even if your performance possibly was. But then I got to the point where they couldn't leave me out. I had a magical year in 1995 and won just so much that year, and so they had no choice. When we had the home internationals at the end of that season, I was part of that squad. So that was a definite defining moment, because that was something I'd always wanted to do. So that, I suppose, and it's really difficult to put a single name on it, other than I guess feeling of euphoria, and I suppose in some ways a weighted lifted as well, because it was something I wanted to achieve, but wasn't sure whether I was ever really good enough to achieve. So so that was fantastic. And I think following on from that, and again, this is all very career orientated at this stage. When I got my tour card in 1990, winter of 1996, so that was the following year, effectively. I went to La Manga and got my tour card, just about scraped in. I was sailing through up until the last round and then nearly completely blew it. And so I got in with the skin of my teeth and got my full card first time. So that was relief, I guess, more than anything. I wouldn't say it was euphoric because I really didn't play that well. It was more relief, and it was a very stressful week. So that was getting through tour school is probably one of the toughest things as a player you have to do, because you're effectively in a situation where you've got 4 days or 6 days, as it probably is now, to plan out your next year, whether you can or cannot work. So the ability to work is defined in 6 days, and if you don't cut it, you don't work, which means you don't play on tour. So it has an awful lot of pressure involved in it, and I wouldn't say it's the most pleasurable weeks I've ever done, and I've done a few of them. However, it is definitely character building, I think, because you've got to certainly learn how to grind out a round of golf. Because kind of crumbling is not really an option. You know, you either do it or you don't. So that was definitely a relief element. And I would say, yes, the third one definitely comes much further down the line. And again, this is all kind of golf and career related, which would have been taking ownership of my academy. I would say that was again a moment which hadn't kind of been on my radar for the whole of my golfing life, because I'd been wanting to be a player and battling to try and do that. So then when things changed from that point of view and playing and competing was no longer an option, then going down the route of really securing my future career as a coach, having my own academy, that was a really proud moment. I would really categorize that as a proud moment for me to kind of take the plunge and do that. So those were, I would say, were sort of 3 defining moments from a career point of view.
Fab. And when was the academy? When did you establish the academy?
So the academy was established in well, it was 2020. So oh gosh, yes, 2020. It was 2019, and then obviously, and the only other day I was trying to think about it, because we've had kind of COVID in the middle, and it feels like 2 seconds rather than I'm actually coming up to the 3rd year. So it's really strange, and so much has happened in that time. It's been phenomenal. So we've got such a busy academy. We've got you know, around about 120 to 150 lessons a week being delivered by myself and my team of coaches, and that's not including the junior academy and our groups. So it's a really busy academy, and I couldn't be happier from that point of view. And I will be adding a 4th coach who will be coming on board in January, so that's really good.
Great. We'll certainly want to talk about that later on, because I think there's some really interesting things about the academy and what you do with it, and what all the other coaches do as well to contribute. What would be great to understand from you is, in those tough times when you were seeking to make your way in the sport, what was it that was sort of driving you in those early years to get to the success that you had?
I think in the early years, going from sort of the age of about 15, 16, it took, you know, golf came around fairly quickly. I only picked the club up when I was 14, and I was heavily into my sport, but mainly tennis. And I did everything prior to that. From I was heavily into my horse riding as well, and also ballet, weirdly enough. So and then as they sort of phased out and I got introduced to golf by my dad, then I was the type of person that would throw everything into it. I'd practice, and so I got my handicap down very, very quickly, and then it became an option when I started playing for the county, and then starting to get looked at and put in the England elite squad by the time I was about 17. So it wasn't a huge amount of time, and then I realized that, okay, where could this take me? So I was driven by the notion that if you wanted to make something happen, you had to work hard at it. And I wouldn't say I was necessarily natural at it, other than I enjoyed my sport. I did work really hard. I did practice an awful lot, many, many hours after school, going to the golf club, hitting balls. Weekends would be at the golf club, practicing, having lessons. So I applied myself for sure. And even then, probably when other people were meeting up after school, I was going home, having a sandwich, getting in the car, being dropped off at the golf club. So straight away, there was that element of, if you wanted to sort of do something with it, you're going to have to really work at it. So that's what I did.
Was purpose showing up for you at any point in those early years?
There was a definite purpose, I think. Wasn't aware of it. I don't feel, but I was very much, you know, my parents were, and you know, would say, you know, you only get what you put into it, and if you want to make it happen, you're gonna have to work hard at it. So the purpose was, I wanted to see how good I could become, and the only way to do that was to work hard at it. Otherwise you wouldn't know, you know, whether or not that was something that was there or not. And people would slowly sort of say, yeah, you know, you've got a talent for it, but that I didn't really know what that meant. Whether that was the talent for just hitting the ball, or whether that would later turn into a talent for being able to get the golf ball around the golf course in the lowest score possible. You know, they're all different types of parts of talent which are involved in playing a sport to a high level, and then having the mental ability as well is a whole different thing. So I think there was a definite purpose to see how good I could become, and that was all at the time.
So sort of personal driver, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out in your second half of your career, almost, because I guess one thing which you told me about previously, which I guess would be some defining moment to some degree, was the injury that you sustained. Can you tell us a bit about that and how that might have reshaped your approach?
So yeah, I mean, one of the things I you know, I always, from a very early stage of competing, was into my fitness. So I trained as a exercise to music instructor, as it was called then, but you know, I would be teaching aerobics, step classes. I did my sort of PT levels, because that was a way of me. I always worked as well as playing amateur golf. So I knew I had to work alongside it. I had to support, you know, my parents would support my golf, but equally I had to bring an income in as well by the time I got to the age of 18. So and that was, fitness was something I really enjoyed. So, and I did have a bad back right at the beginning of my career, and I didn't mention this necessarily before, and that was just from training and not having the knowledge that we have now on strength and conditioning. So I just got super strong, and I got very, very tight in my back and had a lot of back problems. So I was always aware of my fitness and trying to stay injury free when you're competing full time, because inevitably you are going to get injured. It's just the way it is. So having a very, very sort of an accident out of the blue, which most accidents are, but just falling, you know, tripping on a hazard through a door, didn't really come into my psyche. You know, you think you're kind of superhuman, and I've enjoyed skiing over the years. As I say, love my horse riding, And so having a trip which effectively would finish my playing career like that wasn't on the radar. And so when it happens, you're unaware of the consequences other than it suddenly dawns on you. So yeah, that was initially smashing the radial head in my left arm. What I wasn't, immediately aware. However, I do have a cousin who's an orthopedic surgeon, and he is an upper limb surgeon, and it's something that he knew quite a lot about. And I was pretty quickly on the phone to him after the accident within hours. And once I knew what I'd done, and actually in my head I was thinking the radial head smash would, as much as I needed surgery on it to take the bone fragments out, I thought, well, that's got to be slightly better than actually breaking my arm. And then I pretty quickly realized when he said, well, actually what I'd done was far worse. Right. It's your main stabilizing connecting sort of piece of bone to your elbow, so loading energy and impact down that left arm was really going to be very difficult from then onwards. So I knew immediately that probably what I'd done is going to have a major impact in how I was going to formulate my next years onwards in golf and probably playing. As much as I can go out and play some holes, but competing, I haven't competed since. So it was always something I would like to try and get back to, but it is a very difficult injury to practice with as much as anything else. So competing when you haven't practiced isn't really an option for me, because you're going out preparing to fail, which isn't really enjoyable. Because if you're going to compete, you need to have prepared for it, as far as I'm concerned. So that's always for me what's the reason behind doing it. So yeah, a big change in where I was going. Maybe just from a timescale point of view, I'm sure I would have probably got there eventually, but I wouldn't have retired from competing maybe at that point, having had a really successful 2013. So yeah, but I probably wouldn't have been in the situation now of owning my own academy at this point. That might not have happened further down the line. So yeah, it's I always think sometimes things happen for a reason, even if at the time they don't seem to, they're certainly not the ones you want, especially when you then know you've got a life changing injury and you have got it for the rest of your life. That there's no doubt about that. That's changed my ability as I get older. That arm now is always going to be a problem. It's always going to be painful. That's just the way it is. So and it's quite a to have that injury at quite a young age, which is what I was deemed at for that injury, even though I'm not. That type of injury, is harder for younger and active people because of the lack of stability in the elbow joint. So it can be awkward, no matter who would have that type of injury. So yeah.
So how did you use that at the time difficult situation to kind of focus and propel you both immediately and then slightly longer term into your further career within the sport?
I think having I just think having I suppose I didn't really think that much at the time, as in it was just I went virtually 3 years of having 3 surgeries. So every year I was rehabbing for a year and then going back into surgery. So I was sort of had metal put in my arm that failed. That had to then be taken out. I changed surgeons, and I'm very fortunate that Mr. Adam Watts, who's based up at the Wrightington Hospital, looked after me on the NHS, which was amazing. And he's a brilliant upper limb elbow surgeon, one of the best in the country. So I was very fortunate that I got in the right hands of the right person. And he did subsequently 2 more surgeries on me to take metal out and then put a different radial head prosthetic back in my elbow, which was slightly, better for an active person, so that it didn't fail again, which basically means it becomes loose. So you had 3 years of rehab. So the main focus was rehabbing. So getting, focusing on going to the physio virtually every week, sometimes every other week, and doing all the exercises, working with a personal trainer who also helped me get the strength back in my arm, and then jump back into more surgery and then restart it again. So I felt I had 3 years where I wasn't really focused on anything else other than working, and I was coaching full time as well at the time, and rehabbing at the same time. And being self-employed, I would be having these surgeries and then going back working within days. Sometimes I might have a week off. In theory, you're told to have 6 weeks, but I would be back coaching with a sling. Many of my pupils who I still teach now can just remember me virtually for 3 years teaching in a sling when every time I'd had surgery. So, I suppose that's all I was doing at the time. So the reality of once I'd had the last surgery, then by that stage I realised then it wouldn't matter how much rehab I did, I wasn't going to get back to a stage where I'd be fully fit. That was totally gone.
So what did you do to motivate yourself through from that point to where you are today, with a really successful several hundred lessons taking place under in the academy? How did you move from that point to where you are now?
I just think it was just I'm a very stubborn person, as most of my family know, some of my friends will know, and I didn't want to give into it, and I fully aware there are lots and lots of people far worse off than I am, and so just battling on to see how I could make good of what was a bad situation from being a professional sports person, but how I could then evolve my change in career path to becoming the best coach I could become, and be part of the best academy I could put together. Initially it wasn't my academy. I was working for an academy, and so when the opportunity came around, then I really thought, well, I have my own ideas, I would love to put my own stamp on this, and I have my own passions, and that's where I'd like to go with it. So then my focus was just looking forwards all the time, and trying to hopefully jump over the barriers as they came along, which there were lots of them, especially in coaching. Women are a big minority within the industry, and so you still have battles to deal with that as well. So things have got better, but in the early days, even prior to being injured, I think you become as kind of used to battling to sort of fight your way forwards to achieve whatever you want in, for me, this particular sport, because there were plenty of people who would try and kind of stop you along the way, and so this was just another one of those things where it was a case of battling forwards to try and reach a goal, and then the goal of owning my own academy, when that was achieved, then it's a case of, well, then it's how good can we make this academy, and what can we do that's different to everybody else, to engage as many people across the population to engage in golf and enjoy it. I want to come back. So
can you tell me about the passions? You mentioned passions, which is an interesting thing as part of our PurposeFused formula, which we're going to sort of move on to later on. But what passions drove you when you said you had your own ideas and you wanted to do put your own stamp on it, so to speak? What were those?
I suppose I loving the sport, but sometimes not loving the atmospheres around a golf club. They can be seen as sometimes unwelcoming for people who are new to the sport. coming in if they're not a member of a club, and if it's a private club, they're, sometimes they can be unwelcoming environments to come into if you don't know the rules and regulations and the dress code and all the other things that come with it. So for me, I love the sport. I love all the varieties that are within the sport, the challenges that it puts upon an individual player, and you can get anything you want from it, from a beginner or an elite player. It's a sport that everybody can play and enjoy and play together and play their own levels. So I just wanted to be able to offer an environment which was open to everybody. I was fortunate at Chesterfield Downs. It's a fantastic club. It's a club anyone's welcomed in. You don't have to be a member. We have we're very fortunate to have a brilliant driving range with top tracer on there, and we have a gym and a studio and a par 3 18-hole golf course. So it's a fabulous environment to come into. So I really wanted to try and encourage as many people as possible to come in, whether they had a disability, all ethnic groups, anyone that thought that maybe golf wasn't for them or didn't think it was a welcoming, fun environment to be in. If we can provide that as an academy and show that it is for anybody, that was really as simple as my goal was, and sort of my vision was to try and just make it a really fun sport to be part of, and try and remove any of those barriers that maybe stop people from thinking, and especially encouraging more women into the sport as well.
Yeah. Talk to us about a little bit about the impact you think that you've had with those different groups of people who, I suppose access is one thing, isn't it? And then the kind of really whether or not people feel comfortable about engaging with the sport or giving it a try, for all the reasons that you just said. I'm not a member, or I don't think I'm going to be good in, or it's not particularly welcoming, or, there's a bunch of reasons why you might not. But you've just highlighted 4 or 5 different groups of people, disabled people, people from ethnic minorities, etc.
I think we're very lucky because, as I say, at Chesterfield, one, we have an amazing accessibility in that everything's on one level. The range is ramped. So I've had children from Lonsdale School here locally in Stevenage who have who are very disabled with different conditions, and life's really tough, and they, with their electric wheelchairs, we were able to bring them up onto the top of the range and give them the experience of being out on the driving range, which they absolutely loved. So we're very, very lucky, because you have to have, there's nothing you do about the logistics are what you've got. And sometimes if the practice area in the range, you've got to go across grass and whatever, you can't do that. So we're very lucky. And I think, again, using what we've got is a responsibility that I have to make sure that we are adhering to, that we have this, we must use it, because not many places do have it. So if we can offer something, I've worked with a local visually impaired groups for children. Again, we can bring them in, it's nice and safe, and again, we can offer up something which they've really enjoyed, and I thoroughly enjoy teaching them. I have to admit, it's probably something I'm most passionate about. Having come from an elite background within the sport, I probably get my I suppose they inspire me to make it a better academy, because that reminds me that we have these facilities that we need to make sure we're getting full use out of them for all these groups. I run Parkinson's and stroke survivors groups, and again, because we've got an area which, due to different elements that people might have, whether it's walking issues, whether they need a wheelchair again, but we can bring them in, and we hold groups every week, which has been really successful. And not only that, you're engaging people to come out and exercise, socialize, and especially after COVID, that's proved so important for the groups that are coming. And the feedback I get is, just being able to come along, have a an hour's lesson, tuition. We're always doing different types of things, but they're also able to enjoy the company of other people who are sometimes suffering exactly the same condition, so they can also talk to each other and have a conversation of where they all are with the Parkinson's, as it might be, and they can kind of then gain an understanding that they're not on their own, and the conditions that they're having might be the same as somebody else, but they just didn't know whether it was part of the condition or not. So often the conversations can evolve around that, and it's so important every single week. Very rarely do people not come, other than if they're on holiday or they're poorly. They're there every single week. So again, the responsibility on us as an academy is to make sure that we're there to deliver, because you do change that person's day when they come to those sessions. Surely. So I think what we as an academy are always looking to try and do is look out and go, what are we not doing? What are we missing out? Who's missing out? And how can we include those people? And how do we get in touch with them? Who is there a governing body? Is there a group we need to contact? And I do a lot of work with the Hertfordshire Development Committee, and they sit every quarter, and we look at all the and we work with the Hertfordshire Sports Partnership and England Golf, the Golf Foundation, and we look at what's going on within the county and how we can include other elements as part of golf. So there's a much wider reach, and being part of that has made a big difference as well for me, because again, it enables me to sort of have a look at it and think, what am I missing? What are we not including? And how do we go about it?
My question actually is, what's it done for you?
I suppose it keeps it's I feel that what golf has given me, which is a career, I've loved the sport, and if I can offer that up to other people and show that it's not limited to able-bodied people. This not at all. You don't have to be sporty. It's a social sport as well. So for me, I guess I get a kick out of seeing the smiles on other people's faces, even if it means they're pitching up and going, Joe, I played horrible. And if I can, send them away with a bit more of a smile on their face, then that's what I feel my responsibility is. But equally, I get a huge kick out of that. And in that, I think this is a skill that I have in being able to coach and inspire other people to play the sport and enjoy it, even on the days when everyone gets frustrated with it. So I suppose that keeps me. I guess it's kept me going when I haven't been able to play. I suppose I get the same kind of enjoyment from watching other people learn, and equally the messages that I get sent back from people when they've had a great round, they've dropped their handicap, they've won the club championship. I know what that feels like to achieve certain goals and hit certain goals in doesn't matter what level you're at, whether it's winning a tournament, playing for England, or whether it's winning your monthly medal. It's the same feeling, human response. So I get a huge amount from that, because I think it's really important when people do achieve those little milestones. So it's great.
Fabulous. Right, well, I've got one more question, which is, I mentioned it a little earlier actually, around our PurposeFused formula, which I'd like you to have a think about and give us your response to. So purpose being defined by passion. So what are you passionate about? We've spoken about that a little bit. Impact, in terms of the impact that you want to have, whether that's on me as in you, we as in me and my immediate team, or perhaps my immediate team of coaches, those closest to you, perhaps some of your students, and the world, which is essentially as large as you want to go with that. You mentioned that a little bit in terms of changing the sport and perhaps in some of the barriers that you have overcome So passion, impact, and the final one's application. Essentially, what are you good at, and how are you going to do that to bring that passion to life in a sustainable way and make it live? So do you think you can sum up those three areas for us? So passion, impact, application.
I think the passion is the sport. The passion is to drive the sport to all corners of society, if that's possible, whether they want it or not. And so the application, that was the next one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The application is by hopefully having a team of coaches. Well, I know I already have, but also adding, and I'm sure I drive them insane, but I'm lucky to have a great team of coaches. And that can hopefully see the method in my madness for opening up doors for them as coaches, but equally to knock on all the doors around me, speak to as many people as I can to find out what else I should be doing. And I think asking for advice is the key thing, and whether that be Hertfordshire Golf, Hertfordshire Sports Partnership, and knocking on those doors, the Golf Foundation, and going, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? What programs? What should I? What should we be doing? Who do I speak to? So that's the application, I think, is asking the questions and trying to stay on top of what's out there, whether it's just also us as coaches, our application to constantly improve ourselves through learning is, again, another big one that myself and my coaches are passionate about. And that's really important as a coach to stay fresh, because it's easy to just get so involved in your business that you forget to keep learning and listening to other people.
Right.
So that would be the application, I think, of how we go about it. And purpose. Sorry.
The big one, impact.
Impact. Thank
the
you.
Impact, the impact that you want to have on me, we, and world.
The impact, the very simple impact, if I want to have, is if that one person that I've made contact with is playing golf in 3 years' time, then that's good enough for me. If that person who has had Parkinson's for 16 years and has always been a golfer, and suddenly the condition gets worse, knows that they can still play golf, and they still got that support network within the sport to help them. So if I can impact a child from a minority background to get involved in the sport, again, that would be the impact I'd want us to have, and grow the sport in those ways, which isn't always easy, because sometimes finding a way through some of those doors and barriers can be tricky. But that would be the impact I'd love us to have, and as positive an impact as we can always have as well. It always needs to be positive. It should be a fun environment, a fun sport to play, and it's about enjoyment at the end of the day, and engaging with other people out on the golf course and having a laugh. So the impact is just increasing the awareness and participation within our sport, but at a much bigger scale, much more diverse demographic as we can possibly make it.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And
Pleasure.
you are doing that, given the scale of the academy so far and the fact it's growing, and you're adding to it, and then people that go along that we've spoken about and that we know, that's happening. So
yeah, it's getting there. There's lots to do still,
story.
But we're definitely doing our best, and we will continue to try and do our best, and always listen to anybody that's got any ideas or advice. Again, we are always ears open, because anything can always be there can always be better ways. So we're fortunate that, as I say, we've got a really great club there at Chestfield Downs that I'm part of. So without that, we wouldn't be able to do half of what we can do. So we're really very, very grateful for that.
Marvellous, thank you. And there'll be a lot of people grateful
Thanks,
to you for the academy too, and what you do for them.
Hopefully. Hopefully. Only it'd be nice to see some of these juniors. We've got over 100 juniors on our academy, our weekly coaching, and again, I'm seeing some of them now who are now turning 17 and 18. So that's slightly depressing because I probably taught them from about the age of 9. So, but that's quite nice watching them come back full circle, and some of them are coming back. So yeah, that's going to be fun in another 10 years' time.
Yeah, well, you better put them on your own roller model then, won't you?
They'll be pushing me up the range to teach them.
Yeah. All right, great.
Yes. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you so much.